my Lord, who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name.
The First Templar is a 2011 action-adventure RPG game that takes players directly into the world of the Knights Templar during the late Crusader period. While it is not a modern, AAA title and does not aim for cutting-edge gameplay systems, it stands out for its clear narrative identity, its historical atmosphere, and especially its unfiltered portrayal of a medieval Christian worldview. Unlike many contemporary historical games that reinterpret religious institutions through modern ideological critique, the First Templar presents Christianity not as something to be questioned or deconstructed, but as the natural foundation of its world. At its core, the game follows the story of a Templar knight and his companion, a noblewoman accused of heresy, as they become entangled in a larger conspiracy involving the Knights Templar, the Holy Grail, and the political religious tensions of the Crusades. The plot begins with a relatively grounded medieval setting, but quickly expands into a larger narrative centered around sacred relics, hidden orders, betrayal, and the struggle for spiritual and political authority. The Holy Grail, in particular, is not treated as a vague metaphor or symbolic artifact. Instead, it is presented as a real object of immense spiritual significance, capable of influencing the fate of kingdoms and the direction of history itself. This framing is important because it establishes the tone of the entire game. The world of the First Templar is one in which faith is not optional or decorative. It is structurally central. Characters consistently interpret events through religious categories such as divine purpose, heresy, sin, and redemption. The Knights Templar themselves are not portrayed as cynical or morally ambiguous mercenaries, but as disciplined warriors bound by oath, faith, and a sense of higher mission. Even when individual members or institutions show corruption or political manipulation, the underlying concept of the Templar Order remains fundamentally noble within the narrative. The gameplay reflects this straightforward structure. The First Templar is a third-person RPG action-adventure game focused primarily on melee combat, progression, and cooperative play. Players engage in hack-and-slash combat using light and heavy attacks, dodging, blocking, and unlocking abilities over time. The combat system is relatively simple by modern standards, but it is functional and designed to support the game's emphasis on progression through battles rather than complex mechanical systems. The game also allows players to switch between two main characters, each with slightly different abilities, which adds variety to encounters and encourages cooperative strategies in multiplayer mode. In addition to combat, the game includes exploration segments and light puzzle-solving elements. Players travel through a variety of environments inspired by medieval Europe and the Crusader states, including fortified cities, deserts, monasteries, and military strongholds. These environments are not just backdrops but contribute to the overall tone of the game. The visual design consistently reinforces the sense of a world shaped by religion, war, and pilgrimage. Unlike many modern historical games that distance themselves from religious framing, the First Templar fully embraces the idea that medieval life was deeply structured around Christian institutions and beliefs. What makes the game especially distinctive in comparison to more modern interpretations of similar historical settings is its lack of ironic distance or ideological reframing. In many contemporary games set in the medieval period, Christian institutions are often portrayed primarily as sources of oppression, corruption, or hypocrisy, with religious belief itself treated as either symbolic or inherently suspect. The First Templar does not adopt this perspective. Instead, it presents a world in which Christianity is a legitimate and meaningful framework for understanding reality. The Church is powerful, sometimes politically compromised, but still fundamentally central to social and moral order. The Templars are not framed as deluded agents of an unjust system, but as participants in a sacred mission shaped by faith and duty. This does not mean the game is simplistic or free of internal conflict. There are betrayals, conspiracies, and moral tensions throughout the story. However, these conflicts occur within the framework of the medieval Christian world rather than as critiques of it. Corruption is presented as a failure of individuals or factions, not as evidence that the entire religious system is invalid. This approach gives the narrative a clear moral structure, one that aligns more closely with medieval storytelling traditions than with modern deconstructive narratives. The tone of the game also contributes significantly to its identity. The First Templar maintains a serious, grounded atmosphere throughout its campaign. There is little irony, sarcasm, or self-awareness that would undermine the setting. Instead, the game treats its subject matter with sincerity. The search for holy relics, the role of the Templars, and the importance of faith are all handled with directness rather than reinterpretation. This sincerity is part of what gives the game its distinct identity in comparison to many modern titles. From a gameplay perspective, the game is often described as dated or mechanically simple, and this criticism is not unfounded. Combat can feel repetitive over long sessions, animations are occasionally stiff, and production values are clearly below those of major AAA franchises. However, these limitations do not fully define the experience. Instead, they place greater emphasis on the game's narrative tone and atmosphere, which remain its strongest elements. Ultimately, the First Templar is best understood not as a mechanically groundbreaking role-playing action game, but as a straightforward medieval adventure that fully commits to its setting. It presents a Crusader-era world in which Christianity is not questioned as a worldview, but assumed as the foundation of reality. The Knights Templar are portrayed as heroic figures within that framework, and the story unfolds through themes of faith, duty, betrayal, and sacred purpose. In a gaming landscape where historical and religious narratives are often reinterpreted through modern critical lenses, the First Templar stands out precisely because it does not do that. It remains grounded in a traditional, almost romantic vision of the medieval Christian world, where holy orders, divine relics, and religious duty are central forces shaping both character motivation and historical destiny. For players seeking a straightforward Crusader-era experience with a strong emphasis on Knights Templar mythology, sacred relic storytelling, and a serious medieval Christian atmosphere, the First Templar offers a clear and unambiguous interpretation of that world, flawed in execution, but distinctive in tone and vision.